Well, as promised, Mr. Talk to Q is back with us, and we're going to talk a little bit about college football. I know this is a car podcast. I don't care if you don't want to listen to this. You can always skip to the next segment, but we are two people with opinions, and he is our official college football commentator, analysis, color, whatever we're going to call it. Someone I like to talk to about sports. So, Q, welcome back.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate being back, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So today is Wednesday, December 4th, and yesterday the College Football Committee put forth basically the final group of teams that are going to be in the college playoff, not necessarily the exact order that they're going to be in because the championship games are coming up this weekend. Just like with the BCS, just like with the 14 playoffs, a lot of controversy. The fifth team last year was upset, which was Florida State. And outside of the BCS, the number 3 and 4 team are always incredibly upset. What are you feeling? And first off, thank you. Congratulations for your Michigan Wolverines pulling off one of the biggest upsets of the year. That's the second biggest upset. Obviously, Oklahoma beating Alabama was an upset, but I think Michigan won over Ohio State was bigger.
Yeah, going on the road to the horseshoe and holding them to 10 points. Ohio State was really tight, really tight. So they have so much more talent there, yet Ryan Day just kind of, clenches his butt cheeks whenever Michigan's in town, and it caught up with him.
Yeah, it's one of those games where you're watching it and you're like, man, that'd be really cool if they could beat them. And it doesn't really matter to Texas, which is obviously my team, but it's just one of those things because I don't know. It's just one of those things. You just hope to see what happens. But Ohio State obviously didn't fall very far.
And yeah, Ohio State's still a good team, and they've had a really good season. That's just one of those rivalry things that kind of happens over, rivalry weekends. So you have a lot of close games and upsets, things that are kind of unexpected.
We had a lot of those last weekend. I was nervous. I'm superstitious a little bit. I don't like talking crap about other teams when I have some emotional input, I don't know. I just don't like talking crap about other teams when I have, a horse in the race, I guess. And I'm glad Texas dominated the crap out of A&M. The score should have been a lot worse than it was, and it could have been a lot worse than it was. But here we are, college football playoff bracket, and the biggest controversy is obviously how does Alabama get in with 3 losses and Miami get left out?
Alabama got in on reputation in a lot of ways. They've been there, done that. People love to see them. They're good for ratings. And even though Miami has, a Heisman front runner and Cam Ward, you think they would get a little love because it's not like they don't have the pedigree. That's just kind of been down and out for a while. But they're going to try their best to find a way to get as many SEC teams in. That's just kind of what they do. And I don't think, I mean, losing to Miami lost to Georgia Tech, and this weekend they lost to Syracuse, and that was unexpected. But outside of that, they've had a pretty good year. I mean, they haven't had a strong schedule, but they've had a pretty good year. They beat Duke, they beat Louisville, so they've beaten some 8 and 9 win teams. But for Alabama to get thrashed like they did, and still come in with 3 losses, that's kind of tough.
Yeah, I agree. I actually, you have to think back last year because I'm a big Florida State fan too. And even last year, I didn't think they deserved to be in it. They just didn't pass the eye test. And obviously their main quarterback goes down. Their backup quarterback was hot garbage. So you knew just watching those games that they wouldn't have survived in a 4-team playoff. But had it been expanded then, they would have been in. This year with Miami, I think both their losses, they say, came by a total of 9 points. So that's really tough when Alabama got boat raced a couple times. And I think the last time Alabama barely got in and everyone complained, they ended up winning the national championship.
Yeah. And I think they're capable of winning it. It's just that do they deserve to be there? And that's kind of the controversy when it comes to college, because in the pros, everything's kind of set in stone as far as you win your division or you win a wild card spot. But here, because you have people voting, you have some people voting based on pedigree. You have some people voting on the eye test. You have some voting on do they deserve to be in. So it's not really about wins or losses. It's kind of like the Olympics almost, and the Russian judge kind of screws everything up.
Yeah, and again, it was the same issue with the BCS. the number 3 and 4 team. The number 4 team thinks it should be number 3, and the number 3 team thinks they should be number 1 or 2 because they beat the number 1 or the number 2 team at some point that year. I think what's really cool for me here as an Arizona resident is Arizona State is slated to be in versus Penn State, Boise State, which I think everybody wants to see because last time we talked about Ashton being the Heisman, one of the Heisman frontrunners, which I personally think he should win the Heisman over Travis Hunter. And even SMU, like who would have thought SMU?
Man, they jumped into a new conference and they just kind of laid down the law kind of early. So, yeah, Arizona State really surprised me. I mean, I was kind of following Iowa State during the year and then they just dropped off. So I thought they were gone, but I never had Arizona State. So I know that's pretty cool for you. But, and then as far as Boise State, I like Jeanty, but I have to go with Travis Hunter as the Heisman favorite. I don't know if you want to talk about that later, but I kind of like him.
We can talk about it now just because with Ashton, I just think he's done more. And it sounds weird to say because he's setting records. Obviously he's not going to touch Barry Sanders, but when they combine him against the last 3 Heisman running backs, he's ahead of all of them. Mm-hmm. And Travis Hunter, and I really like Colorado because I'm a huge Deion Sanders fan, and their success. It's too bad they just missed it. That would have been really great to see them make the college playoffs. Even more so than Arizona State. Although, I mean, Arizona, I can't act like I'm a diehard Arizona State fan, but in living here, I was paying attention, and I'm really happy for him. But I mean, Travis Hunter is a really good college 2-way player, and maybe I just haven't watched him enough. He just seems undersized. I don't know how fast he is. I know he's dynamic and he's a ball hawk like Ed Reed, but I just don't really know. It sounds silly to say I don't really know how good he is for the next level.
Yeah, I guess what I like about him or what's unique about him is that he plays both sides of the ball full time. Well, he's not like a Charles Woodson, who just comes in for 8 to 10 offensive plays. And this guy has almost 100 receptions and 1,200 receiving yards on top of 14 touchdowns. Not to mention he has 4 interceptions. And every single year he's gotten better. So the only reason why I give him the nod over Jeanty is that he's doing something I've never seen before. I've never seen anyone be full time and dominate both sides of the ball like this in college. This is just something new to me. But I mean, Jeanty, I love the numbers. He's a walking first down. But I have seen that before with Travis Hunter. I don't think I've seen anyone do this before. But I think he's a better receiver than he is DB.
I guess I didn't realize he had that many numbers as a wide receiver because, some people are thinking he's probably not even the best wide receiver on their team. I don't know if he is or not, but I didn't realize he had that many catches.
92 catches.
Wow, that changes my opinion a little bit. And people are like, well, he's got a top 5 quarterback. Like, who cares? I mean, you get what you get. But going back to the playoffs, I don't know. There's a situation where Georgia could play Texas 3 times this year. And last time I saw that was back when there was a chance that Michigan could have played Ohio State 3 times.
And yeah, that's kind of unusual. And I don't know if the seedings will change based on who wins because some of the seeding I think is just kind of preemptive. They're just trying to posture because they want certain matchups. And Georgia and Texas is going to be tough. I think Texas is going to beat them again, but I wouldn't want to see Georgia a third time. I don't want to give Kirby Smart that many opportunities. But yeah, that is kind of unusual for that to happen in college, to see someone lined up possibly for 3 matchups.
So you think this time Texas is going to beat Georgia?
So I just think Texas is a better team. I mean, I like Georgia, and I know that they're battle tested, but they just seem to fall apart at the wrong moments. It's almost like they lack the clutch gene that they once had. So when it comes to a really big game, if it's a tight game, I'm going to take Texas because I just think they're a lot more cooler when it comes to being under pressure. And Sarkisian, man, he just doesn't blink.
Well, I hope you're right. I don't really like to talk crap, but I think that nationally they've kind of killed Texas for losing to Georgia the first time. And maybe I'm just biased here, but I think Texas still played really well. And they show Quinn Ewers' stats, but they never show Carson Beck's, and I think that was Carson Beck's worst statistical game of the year by far. And I think it was just one of those weird things where the score could have been closer. I don't think Texas would have won that game, but I believe that Texas can and will win this weekend in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, I think they will too. When I look at Texas, even though I know they won their first game by like what 2 touchdowns, didn't they? Uh, I just didn't feel like I don't know. I just didn't feel like Texas was really on their A game that day. And they've been rolling pretty well. They're really consistent. They make big plays on defense when they have to make them. And I just don't think that Georgia could beat them a second time.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I think the biggest concern I have for Texas, despite Quintavion Wisner's 180 something yards rushing, is their rushing attack. I don't think him and Jaden Blue are that good. They're actually number 2 and 3 because one was out in training camp. But we'll see what happens with Georgia because they got ran all over by Georgia Tech, which is super crazy. But exciting to see what happens. Who's your dark horse? Where do you think this ends up?
Well, I still think that Tennessee is a formidable team. And given the right matchup, Tennessee can, get in the second round and make some noise. I'm not a huge fan of Penn State at all. I just don't feel like they've really played too many good teams this year, even though, I recognize it, respect them being there. But yeah, I say Tennessee is the team to watch. And I also think that maybe this is the year that Notre Dame actually looks good in the playoffs. I'm not saying they win it all, but normally they get in the playoffs and then someone just, runs over them. But I think Notre Dame can put up a fight this year, maybe get to that quarterfinal round.
I'm excited to see what SMU is going to do. It's weird to say because we don't get to see that team. And the last time we got to see that team, they were in some other weird conference and they were just getting boat raced anytime they played anybody legit. The funny thing is, Penn State and Ohio State came down to the wire. Ohio State and Oregon came down to the wire. Notre Dame, I don't want to say got lucky, but I don't know if you saw that USC game. USC was driving on them over and over and over and just had 2 terrible turnovers, or that would have been USC would have won that game.
And so, they blew an opportunity for an upset there. But I was going to ask you, what do you think about some of the teams on the outside looking in? No one's giving BYU or Missouri or South Carolina a lot of respect. Clemson's on the outside looking in. What do you think about any of those teams possibly getting in if there's an upset in the conference championship?
So what they were saying, though, yesterday after the selection is the teams that are in are pretty much in, and I don't think that they've even considered that some of those teams on the outside could get in because they don't play in the conference championship games, which kind of screws them a little bit. It's kind of like if you play in the conference championship game, you're screwed if you lose in your typical 4-team playoff or the BCS. But in this scenario, the people like SMU and Boise State and even Arizona State that are in there's nothing they could do to get kicked out. That's basically what they were saying. But I think South Carolina's, they say they're the hottest team in the SEC right now outside of Texas. But you lose the games, you lose the games. So I think you could pick holes in anything. But I would have liked to have seen, I would have loved to have seen Colorado make the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a 3-loss team that I would have liked to have seen. I think Illinois had a really good year. They gave Penn State their 1 loss. No, I'm sorry. No, they lost to Penn State, actually, and they lost to Oregon. So, those are 2 good teams you're losing to. And then with South Carolina, they've really come on strong late, but they're going to come up a little short. But if South Carolina was named Alabama, they would have found a way to put them in.
You know who I'm not sold on? I'm not sold on Oregon.
Really? The number 1 team in the country?
Yeah, I'm not sold on them. I don't think, they played Ohio State, but who else have they played? Like, no one ever says that about, everyone's like, who has Texas played? Who are these other teams played? But Penn State's played Ohio State and a couple other teams up there. Tennessee's played everybody. I don't know who SMU's played. Indiana's played everybody. I just don't know who Oregon's played. Who have they played?
Well, they beat Boise State. They beat them early in the year, and they beat Ohio State, and they beat Illinois. Illinois' top 25.
So just think about the 3 teams that you just named.
Yeah.
Right, Ohio State. That's about it. Because no shade to Boise State, but I mean, we don't know about them until they
Yeah.
play in the playoffs. So I don't know.
And they barely beat Ohio State. That was a
That
1-point
was
game.
that was a final possession game pretty much.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, they're number one for a reason. They haven't lost.
So
yeah.
I think they're going to beat Penn State, and remain undefeated, and we'll see what happens then. But man, I like Oregon as far as making it to the championship game. I think they're at least worthy enough to make it there.
I'd like to see them in the championship game. I like Oregon. I don't know. Maybe I just fell in love with their colors over the years.
Oh man, yes.
And Dylan Gabriel is a good. He's a really good quarterback. I think I know he played at Oklahoma, but I feel like he played at like Central Florida or something like that before.
I'm not sure where he started, and it's crazy that it's hard to keep up with these college kids now because they transfer so much. I mean, they'll go to 3 or 4 schools before they graduate. So it's very hard to keep up.
I think when he was at Oklahoma, they beat Texas barely. So I don't forget those Sooners, but we'll see what happens after this weekend. And then maybe as we get closer to the final game, we'll know where the dust is settled and we can talk about it again. So I want to thank you for joining, Mr. Talk to Q.
Well, thanks for having me, man. I look forward to these games this weekend. We'll see if something crazy happens. I'm always a fan of chaos, so I kind of hope it does.
Your chaos scenario real quick.
UNLV beating Boise State. Probably Iowa State beating Arizona, and Clemson beating SMU. I think if any one of those 3 things happens, it's going to shake some things up.
I heard if Clemson beats SMU, something crazy could happen, but I don't know what that crazy is. But I know at this point, I think Boise State, Oregon, SMU, and Texas, they would have to – something would really bad have to happen to shift them out of the playoffs, period. I think somebody else may jump up into that spot, but I don't know much about what's – because Boise State, are they in Big 12 now? No, that's Arizona.
No, they're
Arizona
Mountain
State.
West. Yeah, Boise State and Mountain West. And they only have 1 loss. So, a 2-loss team, they shouldn't have a problem getting in if something happens. SMU, they should be able to get in with 2 losses. But by the same token, there are only so many spots if Clemson wins. So,
if Texas beats the brakes out of Georgia, which I don't think that's going to happen, but if they beat the brakes out of Georgia, could that be that unlikely scenario that moves somebody else up and drops them out?
It could be. It really could, because Georgia would have 3 losses at that point, and there would be a lot of 3-loss teams that would probably be just as worthy.
Maybe South Carolina.
Maybe
or
so.
Ole Miss.
So
probably South Carolina.
I don't know. Ole Miss is a great team to watch, but they don't deserve to be there. Man, they're losing that game to Kentucky. I mean, come on. They don't deserve to be there. They lose in these big games. They always do stupid stuff. Lane Kiffin loves to go for 4th down every chance he gets. I don't even know why he has a kicker. So, I'm fine with them being out.
Well, I mean, Kentucky's almost beat Georgia like 3 years. It's like every year it's a 1-possession game. That's weird to me.
Yeah.
That's a head scratcher.
Yeah. Guess styles makes fights.
Yep. Styles make fights. All right, Q. We'll talk in a few weeks.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jay.
The Hard Parking Podcast, a little bit of cars, and so much more, available anywhere you get your podcast, or check it out at hardparkingpod.com.